I never expected the CEO to laug until her voice silenced the room and changed everything. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The hum of anticipation filled the air, a thick cloud of curiosity and dread swirling in every corner of the boardroom. The sun streamed in, casting jagged shadows across polished mahogany tables. I could feel hearts pounding, the clock ticked loudly in the silence, each second a weight pressing on my chest. There she was, Evelyn Grant, our unyielding leader. Her features were sharp, her black suit seemed to swallow all light. Her reputation? Fiercely brilliant, mercilessly honest, and unapproachably cool. But that day it felt as if she were hiding something. An uninvited tension skated through the room, a secret we all sensed but dared not name. My palms were slick against the cold metal of my chair. I shifted, hoping to draw in a breath, but my lungs tightened instead. As we gathered, my colleague David glanced nervously at me, his eyes reflecting a shared anxiety. This wasn't just another quarterly meeting, it was a reckoning. The board had finally called for a review of our latest project, something we'd poured our souls into. Every pixel, every word crafted like a lifeline. My heart raced. What if they didn't see the value? What if they cast aside our hard work like it was nothing? Evelyn finally spoke, her voice smooth yet charged with something I couldn't pinpoint. You know, she began, the room lurching at her words. Sometimes laughter is the best medicine. A brief chuckle followed her statement, hollow as a drumbeat against our fraying nerves. Then, unexpectedly, she pulled out a small sculpture from behind her desk, a bizarre, twisted piece of metal. It looked like chaos manifested. Doesn't it remind you of the human journey? We bend, we break. We laugh, we cry. The room exploded in murmurs. I felt every set of eyes on me, waiting for my response, my reaction to this outlandish revelation. I felt a lump in my throat. What did she mean? Why the laughter? Did she think we'd failed? Before I could gather my thoughts, the laughter faltered. The weight of her gaze shifted to me. My stomach dropped. Had I fallen into some trap? The air thickened with uncertainty. I could hear my heartbeat echo, thumping loudly against my ribcage. Just then, David gasped, his face paling as if he'd seen a ghost. I turned to follow his gaze, and my breath whooshed out. A figure stood behind the glass door. A stranger. Dark sunglasses, a heavy jacket, an air of undeniable power. I squinted, trying to catch the details, but the figure turned quickly, slipping away from view as if they hadn't been there at all. Evelyn's expression hardened, something unrecognizable flickering for a brief moment. Let's get back to business, she said, but the flicker left shadows in our hearts. I could feel my palms shake. Who was that? Why did she change so suddenly? My mind buzzed with questions, my chest tight with fear. Everything felt teetering on the edge of a cliff. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The energy in the boardroom shifted like quicksand, every shared glance thickening the air with unspoken fears. I could feel it wrapping around us, tying us together in a web of uncertainty and doubt. Evelyn, the beacon of strength we all looked to, now appeared like a ship lost at sea, caught between the waves of her own fears and the tide of our expectations. Start with the numbers, she instructed, her voice cool but with an undertone of something that wasn't quite right. It emanated the type of vulnerability we weren't accustomed to seeing in her, a fleeting glimpse into an abyss, revealing that even giants can falter. David stood, his presentation trembling slightly in his hands. The first slide illuminated the screen, its contents a reminder of the countless late nights and heated debates we had endured to bring our vision to life. I could see the spark of determination flickering in his eyes, yet the pressure of Evelyn's recent demeanor loomed over him like a storm cloud. As he began to speak, I found myself not listening to the numbers but rather studying Evelyn's profile. Each line on her face seemed to tell a story of battles fought off, losses that weighed heavy on her heart. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was battling something far deeper than mere project reviews. There was a name I didn't yet know, etched in the tension of her jaw, held back by layers of professionalism. And if we implement these changes, we believe that we can increase productivity by 30%, David's voice cracked slightly, pulling me rudely from my reverie. Evelyn's eyes, usually steely blue and focused like piercing daggers, seemed to soften momentarily, but it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "Thank you, David," she cut in, her tone abrasive, almost offensive. "We'll need to discuss the implications further." The way she dismissed his well-crafted arguments felt like a blow, as her eyes momentarily flicked towards the door where the stranger had stood just moments before. Silence reigned and, unable to contain myself, I finally spoke up. "Evelyn," I said, tentatively, "is everything okay?" It was a simple question, born of genuine concern, but I felt the room freeze with my audacity. An air of caution gripped David and the others, their faces a collage of surprise and alarm. For a fleeting moment, Evelyn's facade cracked. She looked at me, really looked, as though searching for something behind my words. And just like that, the stronghold she had built around herself began to waver. "We're all amid challenges, personal, professional. It's part of our journey," she began to explain, her voice faltering. "Sometimes, I wonder if we actually lose our way amidst trying to garner success." My heart sank. This was no ordinary slump in morale. This was a glimpse into a storm that raged within her, yet would she let us in? I hadn't expected to see Evelyn this vulnerable, this human. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the chasm of corporate ambition and personal struggle. However, the words tangled in my throat. "Remember," she continued, "it's the struggles that forge strength." I could see her resolve hardening again, her determination to shield us from whatever burden she carried. Just as she regained her composure, the boardroom door creaked open, revealing a familiar face. It was Sarah, the usually vibrant head of HR, but today she wore a mask of distress. "Evelyn, can I speak with you privately?" Her voice trembled, the urgency in her tone palpable. Evelyn's eyes flared with concern, the glass shielding her once again shattering as she nodded slowly. "Yes, sure. We'll reconvene in a moment," she murmured, the room holding its breath as both women stepped out, the door closing behind them. Panic surged through me. What could have caused the usually unflappable Sarah to appear so unsettled? The unease among us intensified, our thoughts racing wild with assumptions and fears. "What do you think happened?" David whispered, his voice tinged with worry. "I have no idea," I replied, though deep within, a nagging feeling settled in my gut. Something was shifting, spiraling out of control. And we were left in a limbo, yearning for reassurance but only gathering fear. As we waited, I couldn't help but glance towards the door. A sinking feeling nestled within me. I sensed that when they returned, if they returned, would be grappling with a reality far removed from the project at hand. A storm was brewing at the heart of the company, but just how much it would spill into our lives remained unknown. Minutes trickled by like grains of sand, each second echoing the tension we all now bore. And then, suddenly, the door swung open, but it was only Sarah stepping back in, Evelyn nowhere to be seen. "Where's Evelyn?" David asked, confusion masking his fears. She needs some time," Sarah managed, her voice wavering as her eyes darted around the room. The uncertainty hung heavily. We could feel the shift, the tremor of the storm that was coming. And then, as questions buzzed in the air like wasps drawn to honey, Sarah's gaze settled on me. "There's something I need to tell you about Evelyn's past," she began, taking a step closer, her expression shifting toward urgency, and before she could finish, the lights flickered, plunging us into darkness, leaving nothing but whispers swirling in the void. The darkness consumed the boardroom, cool panic swirling around us like an uninvited guest. Automatic emergency lights flickered on, casting an eerie glow that illuminated our anxious faces. Shadows danced on the walls, mirroring the turmoil now rising within me. David's breath hitched as he leaned toward the table, anxiety etched in the furrow of his brow. "Are you okay?" I asked him, but my voice was drowned by the sound of my own racing heartbeat. The weight of the moment was palpable. He stammered, eyes wide, darting around as if looking for a lifeline. What was Sarah going to say? Deep down, I knew whatever revelation lay on the tip of Sarah's tongue was crucial. Yet, our collective anxiety hung heavy in the air, merging uncertainty with desperate need. Through the smoky darkness, I could barely make out Sarah's silhouette inching closer, her brows drawn together in concentration. She began hesitantly, the tremor still evident in her voice. "Evelyn's family, she's carrying something. A burden from her past that impacts the present more than anyone realizes." A soft gasp slipped past my lips, hope and dread wove together tightly in my chest. The Eva we all revered was more than just a fearless leader. She was a tapestry woven from the threads of history, pain, and ambition. "I don't think it's about the project at all," Sarah continued, the tremor in her voice settling into a more resolute tone. "It's deeper, something she's held on to for years. If we all knew." She cast a lingering glance at the door as if expecting Evelyn to burst back in and dispel the icy atmosphere. A sickening realization dawned on me. "Is she okay?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The thought of Evelyn, once our stalwart captain, now adrift in stormy waters, sent me spiraling into a fresh wave of concern. Sarah chewed her lower lip, the dim light catching the glimmer of unshed tears in her eyes. "I can't say for sure. Just promise me you'll support her. Whatever it is, it's been hidden for too long." Before I could respond, the lights flickered back on, their brightness filling the space with a sudden rush of clarity. The illumination revealed the tension laid bare among us, fear was evident in each pair of eyes. The boardroom door creaked open, and in stepped Evelyn, her usual poise bolstered by a mask of resolve. Yet, there was something in her Gaussian unease, a friction against the very walls she once constructed. The air thickened as her eyes swept across us, lingering just a second too long on mine. "I'm back," she announced, her tone a sharp contrast to the way it trembled with uncertainty beneath. "Thank you for your patience." Sarah exchanged a glance with me, her expression pleading. I wanted to reach out, to scream that we knew perhaps not the entirety of her struggle, but that a shift was inevitable. "Fear not," at me, at all of us. "Let's continue, shall we?" Evelyn said, shedding her vulnerability like an old coat. Yet something about her demeanor felt altered, as if a door had opened to a realm of hidden shadows, presenting us with a figure we were unfamiliar with. As Evelyn resumed her position at the head of the table, the tension in the room stiffened. The mechanism of the meeting clicked back into motion, but a part of me remained detached. Something profound lay beneath the surface, rippling through our collective resolve. Our meeting, once revolving around numbers and productivity metrics, morphed into a defensive cocoon of corporate jargon. Evelyn pushed through, her sharp intellect weaving through each topic with precision, even as her eyes darted occasionally to the door with a flicker of trepidation. Just then, as our worries twisted and twined, the screen of the projector flickered again and a new slide appeared. My stomach plunged. It was a photo old family portrait featuring Evelyn. But there was an unfamiliar figurine, unknown man beside her. The warm hues of sunlight framed their faces, yet the chill emanating from the image sent a shiver down my spine. "Evelyn," I began, but the knot in my throat stifled the words. I could feel her tension shift. That she hesitated, the air thickening with unsaid things hanging suspended between us. "That's my brother." Gasps echoed in the room, confusion woven tightly with empathy. "But," David interjected. "You never mentioned a brother." Her jaw tightened, and just for a moment, she seemed to flinch. "There are things I don't share." The pause that followed throbbed with silence, and it was then that the storm set its course, unraveled before our eyes, and before I could process what lay ahead, she looked directly at me, her voice quivering with urgency. "You have a right to know, but two can't." My heart raced in response, the air between us a magnetic energy, electrifying and charged with the weight of uncertainty. I sensed that whatever truths lay behind her carefully constructed barriers were on the verge of breaking free. Then, Sarah reached across the table, taking Evelyn's hand, her voice steady yet urgent. "Evelyn, you can trust them. We all care for you." I could see the barrier beginning to crack, emotions battling within her, the past fighting to reclaim its place within the present. The room was hyper-aware, grasping at the threads of a narrative that had only just begun to unravel. The tension rose as time stood still while Evelyn stood poised on the precipice of revelation, and I realized, with heart-wrenching clarity, that whether I was prepared or not, the storm was ready to break. Evelyn's gaze flickered from Sarah to me, her expression a tempest of emotions: fear, vulnerability, and a flicker of resolve. The silence was deafening, each second stretching into an eternity as her past loomed close, threatening to engulf us entirely. "I can't," she muttered, the words barely a whisper, yet their weight carried an entire world of grief. "There are some things I've buried deep. I've worked too hard to keep it all together." Her voice faltered, slipping into a place of raw honesty that felt fragile, as if even speaking about her brother would shatter everything she'd built. "Evelyn," I urged gently, "we're here for you. We can face this together. You can't keep carrying this burden alone." My own heart ached for her, desperate to bridge the divide between her isolation and the support we all wanted to offer. She inhaled sharply, and in that moment, I noticed a tremor in her hands, as if they were searching for something to clutch onto amidst a tempest. Perhaps forgiveness for herself, or for a past that had shaped her in ways she had yet to confront. "You don't understand," she whispered, looking desperately around the room as though seeking an escape. "His death, it shattered everything in my life. My family was never the same after that weekend, the kinds of things that unfold when grief crumbles the walls of our lives." The confessions hung like a delicate thread in the air, vulnerable and revealing. David's brow furrowed in sympathy, and for a brief moment, I caught a glimmer of understanding flooding his features. "Evelyn, we're here now," David pleaded, his voice steady, breaking through the weight of stagnation. "We want you to let us in. We're a team. You're not alone anymore." Evelyn's eyes welled with tears. The conflict building within her was palpable, a silent storm slowly breaching the barricade she had fortified for so long. As I watched her experience this, I too felt the weight of my own unresolved issues bubbling just beneath the surface: my struggles, my doubts, and what it meant to truly be vulnerable. But before she could respond, the room was jolted by the sound of a phone vibrating against the table, slicing through the silent tension like a knife. Irritation swept across Evelyn's features, pulling her back from the precipice of confiding in us. "Sorry," she murmured, her voice strained as she picked up the device, her eyes scanning the screen. "I need a moment." She stepped outside, leaving us suspended in a whirlwind of unprocessed feelings, the air thick with unspoken questions. "What just happened?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide, the gravity of Evelyn's moment almost too heavy to bear. David looked between us, pinching the bridge of his nose in thought. She was ready, but that message, it felt like something shattered in the room. Like we were standing in a liminal space of her truth that we exchanged helpless glances, knowing that whatever awaited us on the other side of the door would be monumental. But as a burst of laughter echoed from the hallway, it threw confusion into the already chaotic mix of emotions swirling within my heart. A lightness floated through the air shortly after, seemingly charming yet unsettling. My gut tightened. That laugh, a mixture of surprise and relief, was unexpected. An uncharacteristic sound for Evelyn, one we had all feared she had forgotten. "What is she doing?" I murmured, an edge of concern lacing my voice. "Is she laughing? Who is with her?" Before either of them could respond, the door swung back open, revealing not just Evelyn but another shadow beside her, a man, tall and imposing, with a familiarity that caught my breath. The laughter died in my throat as I met his gaze. "Sorry for the interruption," he declared with a confidence that filled the space, smirking as if he owned every drop of uncertainty in the room. "I'm Evan, her brother." The surprise blazed through me like wildfire, my heart racing with disbelief. Evelyn's facade slipped momentarily, revealing cracks that called for attention. Evan stepped up to the boardroom table, exuding an energy that contrasted sharply with Evelyn's reserved demeanor. "Sorry if I'm crashing the party. I didn't know you were all in a crisis. But I think it's time to clear the air, right, Evelyn?" A flicker of panic crossed Evelyn's face, her eyes darting to the floor as if the weight of her brother's sudden reappearance was a thunderclap too loud for her ears. "We need to talk about the past, Evie," he continued lightly, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface, at least, to our eyes. The tension in the room rose like a tide, and as his words hung heavy in the air, I realized this was not only about Evelyn confronting her brother, it was about the truth lurking just beyond, waiting to unveil itself beneath layers of collective history. Evelyn looked at him, an urgent plea echoing in her eyes. I can't right now," she whispered, voice shaking, but Evan didn't relent, a knowing smile playing at the corners of his lips. "It's time you did, sister." As I stood frozen, the truth of what lay ahead descended upon us like dark clouds about to burst. I knew that the storm Evelyn had been shielding us from was minutes away from breaking, bringing with it revelations that might irrevocably alter everything we thought we knew. Evelyn's breath quickened as Evan's presence loomed larger, imposing and yet rhythmically chaotic. In that moment, the air between them electrified, tangling with memories I couldn't see but could feel pressing against my chest. Evan's confident demeanor seemed to challenge the very core of Evelyn's carefully constructed barriers. "Evie," he coaxed, tilting his head with a mix of amusement and concern, "we both know this conversation was overdue. You've been living in a cocoon, and it's time to break out. Allow me a moment with you." The knot in my stomach twisted tighter as I glanced at Sarah and David, searching for answers in their expressions, but they emerged as bewildered as I felt. Sarah's brow furrowed deeply, and David leaned forward, eager yet apprehensive. "Evan, maybe this isn't the right," I began, wanting to shield Evelyn from the tangle of unresolved emotions swirling dangerously close to the surface. "Nonsense." His voice rang through me, infecting my certainty with a dose of discomfort. "At the end of the day, family is all we have. Don't you think it's time, Evelyn?" Evelyn stood frozen, a delicate tableau of anxiety and strength surveying a battlefield of unspoken words. Her eyes darted toward the door, a fleeting thought of escape flickering in their depths. Yet deep down, I sensed that something in her craved the confrontation, painful as it might be. "That's not how this works, Evan." Evelyn's voice trembled, a narrative brewing beneath her resolve. "You've barged in unannounced and have no idea what you're asking of me." He stepped closer, a blend of half-teasing impishness and brotherly concern. "You underestimate me, little sister. I know exactly what I'm asking." The tension was thick enough to carve through, parts of it starved of light, and as I watched, I felt the eerie chill of memories that were not my own seeping into my bones. Visions of grief spread hollowed echoes of loss parallel to their exchange. Would this be a moment of healing or a resurgence of greater pain? "I'm going to grab coffee." I stood up abruptly, hardly recognizing the tension-born impulse to flee, yet wanting to create distance from the escalating emotions. "Anyone want anything?" Instantly, Sarah's eyes softened toward me, sensing my distress despite the drama unfolding amidst the sibling clash. "I'll come with you," she said, as she too levied the burden of the unshackled past, standing not just beside me but offering a shield against what might ensue. As we stepped into the corridor, I held Kenny's gaze for a split second too long, uncertain if I should offer reassurances or fear what might happen if I turned away. The echoes of their conflict intertwining in the air tightened around us, growing heavier even as the hustle of office life faded beyond reach. "Is everything okay?" Sarah finally blurted out as we reached the break room, pouring steaming coffee into mismatched mugs. "I can feel the storm brewing, Sophie." That was intense. "I don't know if Evelyn's ready for this." The anxiety curled like a vine around my heart. What if Evan brings up something that shatters the fragile connection she's been holding on to? "We can't control what's happening," Sarah said, her voice soft yet resolute as we both took a seat across from each other at the tiny table. "But we can support her, no matter what. Maybe it's time for her to let it out." Grief has its way of manifesting. I nodded, hoping for wisdom in her words, but doubts continued to plague me. What if she loses it? What if he unearths something that sends her spiraling? I can't bear to watch her hurt. Not again. Just then, the sound of another laugh floated down the hall, this time from Evelyn. A sound of laughter that didn't feel tamed, it rattled against my chest, sending pulses of unease through me. Would the laughter turn to tears as easily as it arrived? Maybe it's a good sign. Sarah ventured, though her tone suggested uncertainty. Maybe this reunion is something they need to navigate together. Before I could respond, the door to the boardroom swung open abruptly, like a revelation laid bare before us. Evan emerged, the earlier. Confidence still etched across his face but now overshadowed with a furrowed brow. "That we need everyone in there," he said, voice tight with urgency. Now my heart raced as we exchanged glances, sensing the undisclosed event gathering like dark clouds behind him. The absence that resonated from their earlier encounter throbbed disturbingly, yet it beckoned with the anticipation of something larger lurking beneath. "What happened?" I demanded, pushing past the rising tide of my worries. A flicker of something inscrutable danced behind his eyes, shoulders taut as he did the unthinkable. "I need to talk to all of you about what really happened the weekend of his death." My breath caught in my throat, and a chill ran down my spine. This conversation could unravel everything we'd been threading together, revealing cracks neither of us were prepared to face. As we stepped back inside, the air thickened, tainted with an unsettling cocktail of secrecy, pain, and a looming, uncharted destiny. The truth stretched just beyond our reach, heart thudding and pulse quickening, painting the walls of uncertainty. And as Evan's gaze locked onto Evelyn's, it was clear that the veil around the chaos of their pasts was moments away from being lifted, exposing hidden resentments and sorrows that could shake us to our very souls. The room felt suffocating, compressed by the uncertain weight of heightened emotions. I watched as Evelyn's fingers fidgeted nervously with the hem of her shirt, a small gesture that spoke volumes of her unease. Evan stood at the front, positioned like a ship's captain ready to steer us into dark waters. Tension rippled unseen, a collective inhalation of disbelief infused with the need for resolution. "Why now, Evan?" Evelyn's voice broke through the heavy silence, trembling but defiant. "What more is there to say? I've spent years trying to outrun that weekend, and you bring it back like it's a gift." "Because it isn't just about the past, Evie," Evan countered with a measured intensity. "It's about understanding who we are, who we've become. We'll never break free from the cycle if we don't face it together." I couldn't help but feel the room pulsate with unfelt resonance, the lingering presence of old wounds reopening, threatening to bleed through the fabric of our carefully woven lives. Unraveled threads dangled precariously, and the ghosts of what happened weighed heavily in the air. "Can we not do this?" Evelyn's chin lifted, eyes flashing, but I could see the vulnerability flickering beneath her brave facade. "Every time we revisit it, we dig deeper into grief instead of healing." "And what do you consider healing?" Evan shot back, frustration leaking into his words. "Living in a lie. Thinking your distance shields you from what you lost. The truth needs airing out, or it'll suffocate us silently." The term truth hung in the air, like a loaded gun waiting to be fired, and I felt my own heart resing, a palpable reminder of my role in this tangled web. She wasn't alone in her distance. I had strayed from offering support, caught up in my fears. "Perhaps we just need to hear everyone out." Kenny's voice rose suddenly, surprising me as his moral compass spun toward the storm. "It's not just about Evan or Evelyn. We all want an answer to why we lost him. Maybe we owe it to ourselves." His depth of loyalty, a buoy amidst drowning sentiments, started to shift the room's energy. A moment's empathy, small but reassuring, sparked a thread of hope, calling for unity despite the undercurrent of dread. "What if we don't like the revelations?" Evelyn's protest was tinged with fear, and my heart ached for her. "Some truths are like removing a splinter. It hurts in the moment, but the relief afterward is worth it." There was a sincerity in Kenny's tone that grounded me, reminding me that facing demons could offer a light glinting on the horizon of despair. We looked toward Evan, who stood waiting quietly, as if expecting the tides to shift with a simple acknowledgement. He wasn't merely delivering a message, he was extending an olive branch, laden with shadows and secrets. "Let's get this over with." A quaver of resignation dripped from Evelyn's words, but their sting seemed to dissolve, revealing an inherent strength. "What do you want to tell us?" Evan stepped closer, lowering his voice as if the walls themselves morphed into wary listeners. That weekend was a culmination of so much more than you know. There are things I had to hide, things I did to protect you both, and now, they're surfacing. What do you mean, protect? The fragility in her voice shattered the faint part of my heart that dared hope for clarity. The stakes rose, each heartbeat resonating deafeningly with mounting anticipation. There was a threat, he stated, each word carefully weighed. And it involved more than just our family's loss. The room chilled, the implication settling with a rancid suffocation echoing louder than any verbal confession. My legs felt heavy, rooted to the spot as my mind raced through a whirlwind of questions, yet none that could pierce through this newfound veil. What kind of threat? Sarah whispered, her eyes darting between Evan and Evelyn as if searching hidden codes in their exchange. There were things happening behind the scenes, the business dealings, rival factions. I was approached about keeping our family safe, and I made choices I thought would protect you. Evan's voice swelled, thickened with burdens untold. But it came at a price we didn't foresee. What price? Evelyn looked like a fragile vase about to shatter, shards of her composed facade cracking under the pressure of unveiled truths, lies and betrayals that spiraled out of control. I couldn't let you bear the weight of it. It felt like a betrayal of your childhood, your happiness, that I'd rather know the truth, she cried desperately, than live in a bubble of falsehood. Why couldn't you just be honest? The stark truth hung precariously with the implication of unknown consequences. Hope wavered, and my heart echoed with a silent question. How much more was left buried beneath the waters of their shared sorrow? As tension settled, a sudden crash echoed from the hallway, causing heads to turn instinctively toward the door. Whispers erupted as you could feel the ripple of unease sweep through us, pulling us in another unpredictable direction. Someone entered, their steps heavy with urgency, and eyes flared wide. Evan, the intruder, gasped, breathless, almost frantic. You need to see this. There's something you must know about that weekend. It's not just in the past, it's unfolding now. Time froze at that moment, the very air around us thickening with horror as a wave of impending doom splashed cold against our skins. A foreclosure of destinies loomed ahead, and our fates now intertwined inseparably with revelations that could tear apart as swiftly as they emerged. All I could feel was a gnawing dread, a whisper of impending calamity closing in, with lives on the precipice of unraveling once again. The shadow of uncertainty hung in the air, twisting around us like an insidious vine, choking the hope that had just begun to unfurl. The sudden arrival of the stranger struck a dissonant chord, and I felt a primal instinct whip up fight or flight, though all I could manage was a frozen stillness. Evelyn's face morphed into a mask of confusion and fear, while Evan's expression soured, an unshakable resolve now colliding with dread. What do you mean? Evan's voice had lost its earlier steadiness, rippling with urgency. The stranger, drenched in perspiration, his clothes sticking to his skin, seemed to grasp for composure. His wide eyes darted between faces, as if seeking a lifeline amid the rising chaos. It's about the threats. The past, it's resurfacing. And there's a connection to you, to all of you, connected already. Evelyn shot back, her breath shallow as she walked toward him, her anger cloaked in desperation. What on earth are you talking about? It's about the trades. Those shady deals you thought were final, something slipped through the cracks. Someone's targeting you, Evan. They're coming for you, and it's tied to what happened that weekend. Stunned silence engulfed the room, wrapping around us like a suffocating shroud. I could feel Evan's breath quickening, the gears turning quickly in his mind as he processed the implications. A silent chord struck between him and Evelyn, as both stared at the man like a fish caught adrift in shifting currents. Why should we believe you? Kenny stepped forward, his protective instinct flaring. How do we know you're not here to manipulate us with more lies? The stranger swallowed hard, his throat working against the knots of urgency. Because I was sent to warn you. I know about the deals, I used to work in that world, but I couldn't turn a blind eye. Not after what happened. What happened? Evelyn repeated, her voice trembling, layered with anger, sorrow, and fragility, creating a perfect storm ready to break. The intruder hesitated, seeming to struggle with his own demons. Lives were lost because someone wanted more power, control. There are people still invested in those losses, and they won't forgive. They won't forget. Each revelation chiseled away at my resolve, and I glimpsed Evelyn's face twisting with a mix of rage and horror. More lies. More dangers we didn't ask for. She choked, her voice weak yet fierce. What kind of monsters have you brought into our lives? Evan moved swiftly, a torrent of urgency churning in his chest. Tell us who sent you. We have to know who's targeting us, how they know they're not just threatening. Mathieu reached out to the living, the stranger replied, almost defeated. Get your affairs in order. The past isn't just buried, it's a horror waiting to resurface. And they're willing to do anything stop. Evelyn's hands balled into fists at her sides, her voice quaking under the weight of his admission. We can't, but her words faltered, emotion spilling over like a cup full of water teetering on the brink of overflowing. Evelyn. Evan moved closer, trying to catch her gaze. We have to confront this together. You knew we couldn't hide forever. It's not just about hiding, she replied, wretched agony breaking through her resolve. It's about survival, Evan. Otherwise, we're no better than they are. The metaphorical walls began closing in. Reality twisted sharply as dread overwhelmed my senses. Who had we become, ensnared in a web of secrets? How many lives were intertwined in this darkness? Around us, whispers ricocheted against the walls, vibrating with anxiety. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown, a reminder that action was necessary before the threads weaved into shadows snared us fully. The intruder was just the tip of an iceberg we had tried to ignore, and now it loomed ominously, a beacon of dread rising above the surface. As the tension thickened, time creaked forward like treacherous footsteps in the night. Do you have proof? Evan finally demanded, desperation inching into his every word. Proof is uncertainty. I'm on the run. But take this warning and run with it. There's something important buried beneath your family's legacy, something that holds the key to understanding and confronting these threats before they come for you. What does that even mean? Sarah gasped, her eyes wide, panting as emotions spiraled once more into a chaotic cyclone. It means finding peace in the chaos, he replied, each word punctuated with the heavy weight of his story. But you have to be willing to fight for it. A heartbeat passed, and then another, as the room was consumed by silence. In that timeless breath, I felt the weight of reality crash down. Whatever lay ahead wasn't just a confrontation with the past, but an ensuing battle for our future. Then, in a frail moment of dark clarity, the stranger whispered, and remember, trust names when they resurface. One of them is far too familiar. I got twisted as those words sank in, a chill radiating down my spine, spinning the very fabric of our group. We had to untangle this legacy, no matter where the path would lead. But as we stood there, vulnerable amidst uncertainty, a new truth dawned. Trust could be just as dangerous as the secrets we were desperate to unveil. The air in the room shifted imperceptibly, a weighty silence lingering after the intruder's ominous declarations had seeped into our collective consciousness. With each fleeting moment, the dread curled tighter around us, blending with the reality of our tangled pasts. The truth he laid bare was like shards of glass in my mind, painful to touch, impossible to ignore. Evelyn's face turned ashen, and I saw the flicker of confusion wash over her features like a wave crashing against a fragile shoreline. Desperately, I yearned to reach out to her, but words seemed inadequate against the gravity of what we'd just learned. What did he mean about names? I whispered, echoing the tremor of fear coursing through my veins. The group had become a fragile web, each of us bonded not just by friendship but by an undercurrent of fear, fears of what lay hidden, fears of what might resurface. That we need to get out of here, Evan said, assertiveness breaking through the haze. If what he says is true, we're sitting ducks. Let's head to my place. It's safer there, Kenny nodded, gripping Sarah's hand tightly, a protective instinct bubbling forth. We'll be safer together. We can figure this out. Yet Evelyn lingered behind, a tempest of emotions reflected in her eyes as she took in each worried face. I need to think. Her voice trembled, a fragile leaf caught in a storm. I wanted to reassure her, but I hesitated, fearing that any attempt to soothe would only shatter the thin layer of control she was clinging to. As we moved hastily towards the door, an unexpected moment of kindness unfolded. The stranger, now a nameless harbinger of despair, stayed back, his countenance pained yet somehow earnest. He extended a hand towards us as if desperate to bridge the chasm of distrust that loomed large. "That I am sorry. I didn't want to pull you into this, but you deserve to know," he murmured, vulnerability lacing his words. "I know fear drives choices. If you need anything, any information, help find me." Evan took a step back, apprehension etched into his expression. "Trust doesn't come easily when you've just dropped a bomb like that. That I know," he responded quietly, the conviction in his eyes betraying an understanding far deeper than his words conveyed. "But the touches of fate are more intricate than you realize, and I'm here hoping to weave a thread of kindness in this tapestry of darkness." But Evelyn shook her head, drawing us all temporarily from our threads of fear. "Kindness is nothing without trust," she retorted, voice fierce yet pained, before stepping into the cool embrace of the impending night, a preferred sanctuary escaping the relentless clamor of the unknown. Once outside, the fresh air wrapped around me like a comforting balm, yet it was laced with an unsettling chill. Shadows danced within the darkness, reminding me of the unseen dangers lurking around every corner. My senses heightened, and I steeled myself for whatever lay ahead. "What now?" I whispered, scanning the streets for any sign of a lurking menace. Evan squeezed Evelyn's shoulder. "We don't have all the answers, but we'll face this together. One step at a time." His resolve steadied my fluttering heart, a ray of hope among the rising tide of chaos, but Evelyn's eyes were distant, lost in thoughts that spiraled dangerously down paths of uncertainty. "What if we're too late?" she murmured, glancing down the darkened street. "What if the past has already found us?" "We can't think like that," I said, trying to infuse a semblance of comfort into the turmoil. "We need to believe we can change this." Confronted. A flicker of determination ignited in her gaze, even as doubt lingered. "You're right. We'll explore every shadow, every secret. But what happens if we find something we can't handle? If it's worse than we fear?" And that was the crux of our dilemma. Fear strangled our movements, but courage demanded we press on. "Then we face it together. That's what matters," Evan emphasized, glancing at each of us with solidarity glimmering in his eyes. As we forged ahead, the weight of uncertainty trailed behind, an ever-present reminder of the danger still lurking beneath the surface. But just as I thought we had gained a moment of clarity, a chilling realization slithered through. "Meth," named the stranger hinted at, echoed profoundly in my mind, entwined with warnings and whispers that felt hauntingly familiar. Who could it possibly be? Before I could voice my concerns, a distant shout shattered the fragile silence, mingling with the sounds of approaching footsteps. My heart plummeted as I turned toward the source, the darkness winking with menace. "Run!" Evan shouted, urgency eclipsing even his calm demeanor. And just as we bolted forward, a piercing laugh rippled through the night air, echoing like a foreboding promise. The unmistakable voice rang familiar, twisting with malice and contempt. In that chilling moment, realization settled heavily like an iron weight. The past wasn't merely resurfacing, it had found us. With each footfall echoing against the pavement, I knew that we were racing not just against time, but against shadows that bound us to our legacy. We were the players in a game much larger than ourselves, where trust hung by a thread and betrayal lurked just out of sight, waiting to ensnare us in its web. As the chase escalated, a question haunted me: could we confront whatever was closing in, or would the darkness consume us whole? The alley swallowed us whole, darkness enveloping our hurried breaths as we dashed into the unfamiliar depths, hearts pounding in unison. The laughter that had chased us lingered in the air like a malevolent specter, spiraling into the recesses of my mind. Every corner we turned felt like a betrayal, shadows whispering unknown truths, guiding us deeper into a labyrinth of fear and uncertainty. "Where do we go?" Sarah's voice trembled, breaking through the silence like glass shattering on cold tile. I wanted to turn to her, offer reassurance, but anxiety twisted my thoughts into knots. My instincts screamed at me to run, for the truth was clawing at us with each frantic beat of my heart. "Let's keep moving," Evan urged, his own resolve flickering like a flame threatened by the night wind. "There are too many angles here, we can't be followed if we don't give them a trail." His voice was tight, laced with adrenaline and something more, a flicker of dread that belied his bravado. Evelyn had fallen silent, trailing behind us. I could feel the weight of her absence, like a cold shadow at my side, pulling me from the clarity of the moment. I desperately glanced back, trying to gauge her expression, yet the dim light clung to her features like a shroud, making it impossible to decipher her thoughts. "Evelyn," I called softly, breaking the tension thrumming in the air. "We need you. Please." When she met my gaze, her eyes held a tempest of doubts, fears, and something more profound, an echo of resilience. What if it's all real? What if the revelation was just the beginning? Her voice was barely a whisper, each word slicing through the remnants of our hope. "Then we face it," I repeated, driven by the need to comfort her even when insecurity flared in my own chest. "Together. No matter what." Her lips curved into a shadow of a smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. It reminded me of a porcelain doll, beautiful, yet fragile. "I don't want anyone else hurt because of me." A pang of vulnerability shot through me at her confession, igniting an urgent fire within my chest. "You're not responsible for any of this. We're all in this together. The past, this nightmare, it's something we're going to unravel as one." Evan, ever the pragmatic voice, interrupted to remind us of our reality. "Let's focus. We can't afford to get paralyzed by our fear. Move," he urged, steeling himself in the way that made him the steadfast protector within our group. As we continued fleeing through the darkness, uncharted streets came alive with unfamiliar sounds and fleeting flashes. A siren's wail slicing through the night, laughter echoing off distant walls, a whispered conversation cradled by shadows. The world felt too vast, too chaotic at that moment, each detail seeping into my consciousness, filling me with a tumult of questions. Just as we turned another corner, our steps faltered. Ahead of us, the silhouette of a woman emerged from the chaos, standing resolute against the encroaching shadows. She was lithe yet imposing, her presence commanding the alleyway like a forgotten goddess returning to reclaim her throne. I squinted against the dimness, trying to see her features clearly, but it was her voice that struck me like a thunderclap, reverberating through the storm raging inside. "I've been waiting for you." The words slid off her tongue, dripping with an unsettling mix of anticipation and amusement. Evelyn stiffened beside me, an instinctual reaction, as the woman stepped closer, unveiling herself further beneath the flickering street lamp. Beneath a cascade of raven hair, her eyes gleamed a piercing cerulean that glinted with mischief and a sense of divinity. "You know us?" I managed to ask, dread pooling at the base of my spine. Her smile widened ominously, unfurling the tension in the air like an answered prayer, yet it felt twisted, like she was channeling something far more sinister than mere coincidence. "Oh, I know much more than you can fathom. Just like I know that your paths have crossed for a reason. To understand your names, you must first confront who you were." Lives intertwined like strands in a fine tapestry. I instinctively moved closer to Evelyn, sensing the surge of vulnerability radiating from her. "What do you want from us?" Evan stepped forward, voice steady, but uncertainty writhed beneath his facade of confidence. Another laugh, a melodic sound that twisted into the night like a haunting refrain. "To share the truth, of course. But I'm not the one that holds the answers you seek. Only the ghosts of your past can weave the clarity you crave." Before I could respond or even process her words, everything shifted. A flash of movement drew my gaze to the edge of the alley, where shadows danced wildly in the flickering light. Those familiar voices now weaving through our reality like a thread poised for a confrontation. The unexpected laughter came again, but it was closer this time, filling the air with a foreboding joy that felt eerily familiar. My heart clenched, recognizing the sound amidst the chaos. Someone I thought I had left behind, someone from a life I tried to escape, stepping back into a darkness I hadn't expected to encounter. The family reunion," the woman announced, her voice now tainted with delight, the specter of her laughter hanging in the balance. I turned, the revelation crashing into me, a wave of recollection igniting with fury as I faced the encroaching figures emerging from the shadows. The past had indeed come for me, unabashedly demanding to reconcile our tangled fates. And amid this unexpected reunion, one truth echoed louder than all others: the darkness had not only found us, but it threatened to force us to confront it or become lost within it forever. The alley stretched out before us, dark, uninviting, and pregnant with the echoes of our pasts. With every breath, the tension rose, enveloping us like a shroud. I could feel the weight of history pressing down on us, pleading to let itself be known, yet collectively, we recoiled from the very idea of it. The laughter, haunting and familiar, mixed with our memories, twisted through the space like serpents hungry for our fears. The woman before us, with her piercing cerulean eyes, seemed to drown the air with her presence, her anticipation crafting a stage for something we were not yet ready to confront. My heart pounded, each beat reverberating in the cocoon of silence that filled the alley as if we had stepped onto the precipice of some unholy alliance. "Tell me," Evan said, his voice steadier than I felt. "What do you know of our past?" Her smile curled, teasing the edges of what felt like fragile sanity. "All I know is that fear is a powerful shroud, binding you to memories you wish to forget. But those memories, they shape who you are, what you fight for even now." With those words, I felt a flicker of recognition surface within me, a connection rippling through this abyss of uncertainty, all tied to Evelyn's brother, lost to shadows we thought we left behind. Yet, what truth awaited us at the heart of this darkness? "I won't let you manipulate us," Evelyn said, her voice a trembling thread beneath the surface of her bravado. Fear flickered in her gaze, though a resolute fire smoldered within, that I knew well. "We're not here for a game. We're seeking answers." "Oh, my dear," the woman murmured, laced with an arrogance I found unsettling. "Life is a game, and you're all pawns. But more than that, you are bridges to the others, the lives intertwined with your own." At that, I felt compelled to glance backwards, through the gathering shadows, as memories swirled violently. Shading my thoughts was the figure that loomed close, the man to whom the laughter belonged. Even from afar, I recognized him, as if a series of dreams had finally snapped together. "Jacob! Don't you dare try to spin a tale," I felt the anger rise within me, old and vibrant. "Nothing can justify the pain, the betrayal. You think this is some twisted legacy? Oh, it's not a legacy, darling. It's a reckoning." When the laughter broke free again, I flinched, unable to weave empathy into something I demanded understanding of. However, it happened that my chest tightened as I felt Evelyn flinch next to me, living proof that memories were, indeed, living entities surging to claim their place. "This was never about stirring the past," she whispered, and the vulnerability in her voice tugged at the fabric of my being. "We didn't ask to be here." But the woman stepped forward, a semblance of intimacy between them, and as I looked on, anger began to melt into pity. "Each of us is confined by chains forged long ago. But each renewed connection holds the key to understanding. The truth is buried among the pieces. Trust that what you find will take you toward healing." "That I want trust some stranger," Evelyn interjected, though a tremor of uncertainty edged her words. And in that moment, as her brother's presence quaked through the forgotten echoes, the persistent warmth of my hand found hers. "You don't have to do this alone." Then, as if a spell had been broken, the laughter resumed, vibrating from the depths of encroaching shadows. Jacob emerged fully into the dim light, brimming with the same arrogance I recognized from years past. "You really thought you could hide from everything, didn't you, Evie?" His voice, tinged with sincerity mingled with malice, pulled at a war-torn thread in my chest. "You don't get to dictate my life. You don't get to haunt it," she shot back, though I could see the weariness etched into her features. "You think your presence somehow gives teeth to your feelings. You left us shattered." "Yes," Jacob nodded, and his expression morphed from arrogant to something I never expected, vulnerability. "Yet the pieces are still here, together but apart." Behind him, I could see the shadows. Deepening figures shifting just out of reach, eager, hungry. This was not merely the resurgence of old conflict, this was a reckoning for truths we had dismissed as forgotten. What kind of truth, though? "Enough." Evan's voice rang out, cutting through the chaos like a knife. "This isn't a reunion, it's a reckoning, and the echoes of it will not be silenced. If our pasts are tainted with grief and betrayal, let's lay them bare so we can reclaim ourselves from this ruin." Amidst the gathering storm, our collective breaths entwined, molding the space by fueling courage under the weight of desperation. I looked at Evelyn, ignorance dissolving into warm resolve. "No matter what we uncover, we will face this together. No one stands alone amongst shadows. A flicker ignited in her gaze as she nodded, gathering the courage of our shared histories. You were the family I lost when I thought I had lost everything, she said to Jacob softly, her voice quaking in the uncertain air. But that isn't who I am anymore. Perhaps this was never about forgetting. Jacob's tone softened, an intimacy returning to their exchange. It's the connections that endure, love, hurt, distance. We cannot run, Evie. It will always shape us until we confront it. As his words spilled out, like a gentle river brushing over jagged rocks, I could see Evelyn's walls quaking, trembling as she laid bare her guarded hearten offering steeped in fragility. The shadows that flanked us began to move, cascading with frayed memories that clung to the air, threading connections we had thought only existed in the realm of dreams and desires misplaced. Together, we would peel away the layers that obscured the truth, we would stitch together this quilt of the past, so it wouldn't suffocate us any longer. As murmurs of courage wrapped around us, I whispered the only prayer that weighed heavy in my heart: let this path lead to healing. Let us find closure. The shadows built a crescendo of emotion, not just fear and regret but a surge of hope weaving through despair. We would confront these ghosts together. In that moment, something shifted, leaving behind darkness wrapped and waiting. In this newfound strength, I could hear the echoes begin to settle. Laughter rang through, but it no longer felt like mockery, it felt like a Kala beckoning toward a future reborn from scars unwilling to fade. Then the storm truly gathered, not as enemies but as allies, resilient souls drawn back into shared narratives. It was time to weave the tapestry, a new one that wasn't just about our past but was burgeoning with the potential for love, forgiveness. For together, we would bring light to even the darkest corners of our shared existence. As the figures from the shadows began to converge, new bonds were forged. I found comfort in one undeniable truth: amidst the thunder of our stories, together we could reclaim the echoes, learn to laugh through the fog, and accept the multifaceted emotions that defined us. That I and the warmth of unity. I turned to Evelyn, and found that in this storm of whispers and ghosts, we had already summoned a flicker of light that dared to illuminate our way, navigating not just through the shadows, but toward brighter tomorrows. And as that epiphany washed over me, I realized this moment would not be the end, a mere flash in time, but a canvas laid bare, waiting for each of us to paint our truths, our reckonings, into something beautiful. Opening my heart fully, I breathed into the darkness, letting hope inspire the flickers of joy that had evaded us for so long. As I spoke the words that needed to be shared, I felt the warmth swell, ringing through the alleyway like a declaration of intent: I forgive you, Evelyn. I forgive us. It's time to let go of fear, and carve new paths, woven rich with love. In that acknowledgement, laughter once again erupted from somewhere deep within the shadows, echoing brighter than before, a sound that entwined the melody of our truth, stepping boldly into the unknown. And I realized this was just the beginning, every fracture a glimpse of futures unwritten, where our values end. Bonds would flourish anew. That belief danced on the cusp of my tongue, heralding the change we had long awaited. The key to healing had finally been placed in our hands. No longer haunted not by despair, doubt, or the ghosts of yesterday, tonight, we wrote our own legacy.